So right behind me is the Cavern Church. I'm here in Coptic Cairo, where the Coptic Christians live, some of the oldest Christians. This Cavern Church is believed where they believe this is where Jesus stayed when he was a baby, and they stayed here for 3 months. And as you can see, there's a well here where they believe they drank from. They believe this church was founded by Mark in about 45 AD.
Lo que hacen el bautismo aquí en esta puerta. Pero aquí, como le vimos, estos semillas aquí, y estos humanos se convierten en el cristianismo ambiantes. Es único.
Debe ser la lluvia que ha filtrado.
And the interesting thing about this place is the Coptic language. The Coptic language is kind of connected to ancient Egyptian language, so it kind of preserved it. And then when the Arabs took over, they kind of made everyone speak Arabic. But some of the Coptic Christians kept the language alive. Most of them speak Arabic now, but the Coptic language is live, which kept it to ancient Egyptian language, which is interesting. So they wanted to separate themselves from the Orthodox Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, and also the Catholics, so they call themselves the Coptic Christians. But they're here in Egypt, and yeah, it's pretty cool. And a lot of sites here, some of the oldest Christians in the world. So in these Coptic churches, there's always like a depiction of the lifespan of Jesus, starting from when Mary talks to the angel to realize she will give birth to Jesus, and it goes all the way until Jesus' death and even the resurrection and him coming back to life. But one of these scenes where he's being anointed by John the Baptist. John the Baptist is very interesting to me, and kind of the rumors of him being part of the Essenes, I should say, the Essenes, which was a Jewish group that he had out in the desert and that still exists today, called the Sabaeans in Iraq and Iran and other places in the world, some in America as well. The Iraq war displaced them, and a lot of them had to leave, and they also get persecuted in Iran as well. But very interested in that, so I want to show you this scene. You know, he got the dove above his head, kind of showing the power of God coming down on him, but him standing on a snake is something I've never seen. It's probably out there, but But even to this day, these depictions have a lot of importance, even seeing some of the Coptic Christians come by and kiss it as they walk around the church. So I believe one of this scene, which is a famous scene you always see depicted, is the raising of Lazarus, Jesus bringing Lazarus back to life, which is here. One interesting thing I just noticed is that I always like looking at different churches from around the world, how they depict these scenes, because they're all a little different, and I tend to favor some of the oldest ones. This area being around, established as a church around 45 AD, although they believe the family of Jesus came here for 3 months on their trip, from outside of Jerusalem all the way down the Nile and back. They made a stop here. Jesus is holding something in his hand, which I found very interesting. I don't know what that is. I do know there's some of the oldest paintings of Jesus. If you Google it, you'll see Jesus even having a wand and kind of looking like a Roman philosopher. But something in his hand, and it kind of going through Egypt to the museums, all the pharaohs are always holding this short little stub in the hand. Almost looks like a handle of a sword, but it's just like a bone or a short piece of wood or something, stone. But when I saw Jesus holding this, I kind of thought back to the Egyptian museum. I was there yesterday. The pharaoh's holding something similar. Another scene very interesting is when Jesus was at the wedding and they ran out of wine, and he was able to multiply the wine for all the guests. I don't know if I read in the Christian side or more the Gnostic Christianity side that Jesus didn't want to take all the credit, and Mary's kind of mad at him. Some people have said that this could have been Jesus's wedding. Typically in Jewish custom, the mother would be in charge the wedding ceremony, so she would be in charge of getting the wine, and that's when she realized she was out of wine. And so why would a guest at the wedding, why would Mary be running around if she was just a guest? She was the mother of the groom, possibly with Mary Magdalene being beside Jesus. And I found this depiction interesting, is that they're both sitting at the top of the wedding table as it is Jesus' and Mary Magdalene's wedding, and Mother Mary over the shoulder. So very interesting. It's pretty interesting. Been a Christian my whole life. I guess I'm still Christian. So it's a complicated question, but been in churches my whole life, and to go in there and you hear people praying in Arabic, it was so interesting because I've never heard people, I've been in mosque where people are praying in Arabic, but to be in a church where they're praying in Arabic is very interesting and really cool. And to see the amount of respect they give to the paintings on the wall, the imagery, kissing the floor, taking their shoes off. I made a couple boo-boos, but yeah, I could overhear the churches on the side praying in Arabic. And I just thought that was so cool. Seeing Christians pray in Arabic is really interesting because for most Westerners, just hearing that noise, we picture Islam and mosque and people praying like that. But, you know, to hear Christianity prayed in Arabic is, yeah, it was very interesting and beautiful. What also is interesting is behind me there's a depiction of Joseph and Mary or Jesus going through Egypt, and you see the pyramids. I find that interesting because there's no mention of the pyramids in the Bible. So there's mentions of Egypt. There's mentions of, you know, there's mentions of Egypt in the Bible, but they never mention the pyramids, which, you know, we still talk about the pyramids today. You think they would have talked about it. So I always found that very interesting how that just didn't make the Bible, you know. Maybe it wasn't important, maybe it was sacrilege, but I found that very, very interesting. By the way, I think my motto, my tagline is very interesting. All right, that's interesting. Two stories I've never heard of, I guess, Christianity, Coptic Christianity, which is St. George, who was apparently killed and resurrected 4 times. He was a warrior and from Cappadocia, which I went to in my first season. And apparently he was supposed to worship idols, and he refused. Again, I don't know too much, and I was just reading in there in the church, the St. George shrine. So St. George refused, and he was tried and killed. Apparently he was killed 4 times and resurrected 4 times, which is interesting. Never heard the story. Pictures of him on a horse killing a dragon. When you go in this St. George shrine, it's interesting because there's huge wooden doors. I mean, gigantic. But there's also chains that everyone is praying to and kissing. And these chains are someone else I don't know, Philomena, if I'm pronouncing that right. I was just reading about her. A Greek girl who wouldn't marry somebody. I don't know much, but wouldn't marry. Claimed that she would be basically married to Jesus. And they tortured her and chained her up, tortured her, and ended up killing her. And the Archangel Gabriel took her up into heaven. And they tried to tie a rope with something heavy and throw in the river. But St. Gabriel cut the rope and brought her up, and they shot her with arrows. And then the angels healed those wounds. But the chains are down there, and you could pray and kiss them, and people put them on their neck. And very interesting. I've never heard this story before, so so much, there's always new stories to learn when you travel.
Земя, е там вечно място, но както казах, няма място в целия православен свят да се почита неговата честна памет, така и тук, където се намираме в този храм, изграден в стил ротонда.
Also, there's the Synagogue of Israel in there. Wasn't able to take pictures of photos, but interesting synagogue. Know nothing about it, but yeah, very interesting. So the Coptic Museum, I mean, Egypt has a lot of amazing things, but the Coptic Museum in Old Cairo is pretty awesome for Christian history. The museum has many depictions of Greek Christianity and then Coptic Christianity, which came after. Has part of the Nag Hammadi Library, which was found in 1945 in Nag Hammadi, Egypt. And it has more of a Gnostic text of the Gospels, and some other Gospels are not included in your current Bible if you're a Westerner, the St. James Bible, or King James Bible, forgive me. So, interesting, I didn't expect to find that here. So, I mean, I should have, I'm in Egypt, but yeah, the Nag Hammadi Library, which is, got a lot of interesting Gospels in there. And the crucifixion of Jesus in that Gospel kind of is similar to the Quran, which I find interesting. So they're kind of dating some of the Nag Hammadi Library, the books. I mean, they basically found them in a desert and they were all rounded up in Egypt and then translated them. And basically, they found that there was parts of the Bible in there, just like the Dead Sea Scrolls. In fact, they were found the same year or 2 years. But then kind of going into it, they realized that there's other Gospels. I mean, the Genesis story, the story of the serpent in the Garden of Eden is completely different. The serpent in the Garden of Eden is actually good. And the God of the Old Testament is actually kind of bad. It's a materialistic God, not the spiritual God. And when Adam and Eve eat the forbidden fruit, they kind of, in the King James Version, they understand that they're like gods. And you'll read that God says in a plural sense, oh, now they know they're like us, which is a sin. And so he banned them from the Garden of Eden, which is interesting. The Nag Hammadi Library version of this, which I read a couple months ago, said that, basically that the serpent was telling them, hey, eat this. The gods are trying to trick you. They're trying to take your power away. They're trying to keep you in this material world, basically. And so they ate it. So the serpent was actually a good person kind of telling them, or a good creature, rather, telling them, like, hey, you should eat that. This God is tricking you, or one of these gods are tricking you. Another thing is the crucifixion. They don't believe Jesus was crucified. I forget the whole story. It's been a few months since I read it. But basically that someone replaced Jesus, or Jesus snuck out, so he wasn't actually killed. Someone was killed in his place. And that's very similar to the Quran, which someone looks like Jesus took his place and died for him on the cross. So interesting that this earlier Christian text, some argue later. I think it's split, some's later, some earlier. Probably earlier in my opinion. Maybe even comes from the Essenes, which was a John the Baptist cult in the deserts outside of Israel, or in Israel, but in the deserts outside of Jerusalem. So, very interesting. So you have this old Christian form matching up with the Quran, the Islamic form, and then most Muslims believe the Bible we Westerners have has been tampered with. And then you find this older Christian text that has different stories. So I'm trying to think of any other things that are kind of different in there. I mean, you can read it in Nag Hammadi Library, you could buy it, buy the books. Very, very interesting. So seeing that in the museum was great. Seeing Greek characters that are also incorporated with Egyptian, ibis, the dog god, was interesting, showing that, again, one religion is kind of, another culture takes over and kind of forms their gods based off the Egyptian gods. So we kind of already know that, like the god Thoth is Hermes Trismegistus in Greek, and is also Mercury and when the Roman Empire took over. So the gods are just changing culture. So something I'm fascinated about. So I thought that was a very good surprise to find the Nag Hammadi Library. So behind me is the Hanging Church, the Church of Mary, but the Hanging Church, which dates in this area from the late 4th AD, so late 300s, after death. So let's go inside and check it out. Well, I guess they call it the Hanging Church because literally hanging. You can see through the windows below, there's space. So